And we are live. Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment live on YouTube. Now, Mr. D is with me now, so hopefully this won't descend into the sort of chaotic blithering that we had with the first one. Hello, Mr. D. How are you there in Canada land?
I'm doing great, and it seems like I have newfound respect for nurses, doctors, paper boys, bakers, anyone who does night shifts, because it's very early here in the morning in Canada. It's just gone 4:30, and after a couple of hours kip, I'm feeling rather refreshed and raring to go. How are you doing in London, sir?
I'm knackered. I'm totally knackered already. I was so nervous when I kicked off this morning, and after this I need to run out and buy a new shirt because this one really stinks. I'm just. I'm wrecked already.
All that to look forward to. So here we are. It's launch day, and I'm just completely and utterly blown away by what's going on. It's been quite the morning, isn't it?
It certainly has. It certainly has. We've been, well, first of all, we're still #1 in pop music in Amazon.com, which is fantastic. We've pushed Phil Collins and Carly Simon down. There's a sentence I never thought I'd ever say. So that's fantastic. And we are crawling up the humor charts in all the other territories as well. But the thing I've been looking at is the reviews, just absolutely fantastic reviews from people with their own take on the story and the characters and everything. Some very different takes, which has been brilliant. So, people are loving it. So it's a good start. Really, really good start.
I'm loving the room you're in, Mark. I'm almost expecting some bloke to walk across the back like you get in the news channels.
Well, we probably will. Yeah. I mean, let me see. I'm going to lift this up and hopefully I won't wreck everything. But yeah, there's the Orion office, which you can see behind me. I chose this spot because we had a bunch of people help launch this morning, a bunch of colleagues, which was really nice. There may be people splaying themselves up against the glass later on.
Hopefully not something like out of The Thing or Aliens. I'm hoping not that kind of reaction.
The day is young. Yeah.
So one of the things that I found really interesting, and I'm wondering if people who've launched their first book have experienced this as well. This kind of huge amount of work that goes into writing the book, and this part of it, the bit where it's actually launched and you start getting the reviews and you start realizing it's real, seems like it's the huge payback for all of the hours and hours of finding typos and plotting and the like. This is something quite special, isn't it?
Yeah, and you've got to enjoy it. You've really got to enjoy it, I think. I've been a kind of gibbering nervous wreck today, but I'm enjoying the highs, and I think you should. So
now, what's your reaction to what's been happening? Because you kind of woke up having probably about 4 or 5 hours worth of action already start happening. When you woke up, did you just get like a barrage of emails with everything that was going on?
Well, that's just a usual day with you, though, isn't it? I wake up and usually get about 11 emails from DeVoe, where he just splurts out whatever he's thinking in that moment. So, it wasn't really different to any other day. But yeah, it was interesting because when I went to bed last night, we had sold precisely 10 copies. And I thought, great, we're in double figures. I can sleep now. I can actually go to sleep. And when I woke up, we'd sold quite a few more, which is nice. And at the time, I think we were at #3 in pop music or something, or #2. It was, get up, breakfast and everything. And then I'm on a train with a rather patchy signal trying to figure out what's going on. It's been a roller coaster day so far. But yeah, I'm wasted already.
You don't even drink, do you? It's incredible. No. Now we have people watching this live. So I'm just going to say a quick shout out to Richie. Richie's put his message on to say hello. So if anyone's watching this live on YouTube right now, there is a window to the right of this screen, which is when I turn like this, I'm actually looking at on my other screen. Ooh, 2 screens.
Hello.
Very technical. And Nick May has shown up. Nick,
hello,
good morning, sir. Or should I say good afternoon in the UK? So if you want to ask us anything during the show, just type your message in there and we will try and respond.
Yeah. So you're just surviving on a few hours sleep. So are you going to be able to last?
Whose idea was it to do this?
Yours. All right, let's make this absolutely
I take
clear.
full responsibility. Yeah, I went to bed about 2 hours ago, and I had that kind of horrible thing where I set my alarm and was checking to make sure that, you know, the little symbol on the watch actually showed that it was turned on, it was going to make a noise. And then I went to sleep and had promptly 2 hours of very unsettled sleep and dreaming about me waking up at like 8 a.m. in the morning and having missed this show. So yes, it's been quite good. But the thing that I'm concerned about is I'm going to be going right the way through to we're starting a show at 6 o'clock PST, which is 2 a.m. UK time. That'll be our 4th live show of the day.
Yeah, I won't be on
by
that
then. I feel quite refreshed after my 2 hours of sleep. I think by tonight, poor Shannon Mayer is going to be joining us, a multi-million selling author who recently was out selling Stephen King on Amazon. Pretty amazing stuff. She's going to be joining me, and she's probably going to be sitting beside me here wondering what on earth she's let herself in for. But anyway, it should be quite amusing.
And we're hoping as well to have Joanne Harris on later on the show. We're hoping to have her this morning, but it looks like it might be this afternoon. But as with any of these things, it's a movable feast, and it might be a feast that doesn't happen. But stay tuned. You know, this is all part of the excitement of the day. This is like Live Aid, only really badly organized.
Well, Live Aid was a bit of a complete, like, it was a very, very quickly organized event with Bob Geldof screaming, "Give us some money!" But I guess their live feed worked, didn't it? And they didn't have the internet back then, did they? So
no, quite.
Yeah, funny. Excellent stuff. So let's talk a bit about what we've been seeing. One of the things that really surprised me actually was that the first thing that I noticed was that Canada very quickly started to update their statistics, and we started to see chart positions coming in Canada early.
Hang on. Sorry to interrupt. We have an urgent message coming in from Sam Howe, which says, "Who is the mustachioed hunk in the bottom right-hand corner?" Well, that of course is Dave, our editor, who not only is a technical genius but also a mustachioed hunk. And hello to Lawrence Doherty from Belfast, who I know Belfast and Northern Ireland and Ireland today are being battered by Hurricane Ophelia. So, you know, stay safe and cozy, folks. Stay inside, you know, maybe, you know, read a book.
You know.
Just any book that's come out today. And Richie Yanekowicz, did I get your name right, Richie? I hope I did. He says, when's the movie coming out? Well... who knows? And Josh Atkinson says, hey. And I want to say hey back to Josh because he sent out a newsletter bigging up us and the book today. So thank you very much for that, Josh. It's hugely appreciated. So sorry, yes, you were saying Canada.
Yeah, well, it was really interesting because we were sitting around like tumbleweeds thinking, oh, because there's this whole idea about, was this going to be a car crash? And nothing was really happening. Like, you know, you get the RSI on your, you know, Twitter finger refreshing the screen, and nothing was coming up. It wasn't telling us anything about book rankings. It wasn't telling us anything about chart positions. And then Canada came live first, and we got a placing in the top 10 in the humorous chart there to begin with. And then obviously UK was kind of in bed, but they started showing statistics really early. But it was the US, it was Amazon.com that really had me worried, because for about 6 hours, nothing was happening. There were no statistics. And I know authors are always kind of interested to see what is the time delay on statistics. And that we're still trying to work out right now. We don't know actually what we're seeing as sales is actually current sales, or whether those are possibly updated in advance. But
well, I mean, I'm only refreshing the Kindle Direct Publishing sales reports every 30 seconds. And they are updating. I mean, you know, we've sold 5 copies since we've been on air, which is nice. So let's keep talking.
It's obviously working. The question is, would we have sold 10 if we weren't on air?
Yeah, great. Yeah, exactly. If you buy a copy, we'll shut up. How about that?
Yeah, exactly. If we sell 1,000 copies, we will actually turn off the video.
Yeah. And if we don't, I'll start stripping. There we go.
Oh, it's funny. So, and the funny thing was, how about this for kind of a very bizarre law of attraction thing? I wrote on the Facebook page because I was getting a bit nervous, thinking maybe nothing's happening in America. Maybe we haven't sold any copies, but we were seeing like tons of reviews coming in. Yeah. I think there were about 7 or 8 reviews within the first couple of hours, but no sales. And I put it on the Facebook group, and literally about 2 minutes after I posted that saying, what's happening in the US? We're not getting any information. It suddenly posted, and boom, there we were, across 3 categories in the top 10. Music, which I found was quite amazing. And there was one that was called family and
parenting and families and humorous. So yeah.
But the one that I thought you might have an aneurysm over was the fantasy humor category.
All up for that.
Which we'd kind of gone in over Terry Pratchett.
Yes, but also below Terry Pratchett as well.
Well, yes,
Terry Pratchett is pibble-dashed across that chart, you know. So, but yeah, it's good to be on the same page as someone as amazing as that. Neil Gaiman,
it's incredible,
as well.
Isn't it? Yeah. But the challenge with that is that we're going to have to outsell Neil Gaiman today to take the number 1 spot. It's not going to happen, isn't it? Good Omens.
It's Good Omens, and that's of course the big TV show that they're filming at the moment. So interest in that is at an all-time high. I mean, you never know. Let's see.
Absolutely. No, it's interesting stuff. So we're looking at the question here on the screen, actually, from Lawrence. And Lawrence says, who decides the category that the book appears in? And you know what I've discovered? Now, here's something that's a great question, Lawrence, because one of the things I have discovered is that you get to choose basically 2 categories, and those go across the world. So Amazon has, I think we found about 13 or 15 different sites, ranging from UK. There's a ton in Europe. You know, there's France, Germany, Spain, Italy. There's Australia, India, China, Singapore. Can't work out Singapore or China. That doesn't seem to be normal rules applying. We're in Japan though. Have you seen the Japanese page yet, Mark?
I haven't. No.
Oh, it's great. I was looking through all the pages. It was fantastic because everything was written in.
Amazing.
It said something like, in all of the Europeans, it said English book next to the title of the the actual book itself.
Oh, well.
But yeah, we're basically, so you put those 2 categories in when you sign up, when you put your book online, and then basically they go out. And then there's a whole other mystical thing that's going on, which is you put keywords in, and then Amazon kind of choose which of those categories are most relevant to your book. I don't know if they even scan the entire book, look at keywords within the book, but there's some kind of magical algorithm happening, and then you start appearing in different charts. So that's how we understand it so far.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and we went through a very careful selection process of looking at keywords and looking at charts. You know, if something is number 1 in a chart where Good Omens is number 1, you're going to struggle, because you know it's that book will be selling a lot of copies, you know, day in, day out. So now Lawrence has asked, or Richie says no stripping. Well, okay. Lawrence says, who decides categories? Oh, and he's also asked if he can have the role of the cow in the movie. Yeah, rear end, front end is already backseat. So thank you. So, yeah,
it'll definitely be a 2-person job. I think that cow.
Oh, absolutely, no question at all. So yeah, it's the category thing is a bit of a dark art, but the thing is, it's never just fixed as well. You will be able to tinker with it. We'll be able to make changes and keywords, and you know, if something happens, like if you know when Glastonbury Festival comes around, you know, we can bombard the keywords with Glastonbury phrases and everything, so that when people are looking for books about Glastonbury, our one will come up top. It's things like that you have to constantly dip in and make changes and adjustments and follow the market, really follow where the popularity is. If you've got something, a character or an incident or a place that's suddenly popular, then make sure that's in your keywords, because it really helps with the visibility.
Yes. Yeah. And actually one of the things that I was really interested in as well was we set up this night watch, we called it. Did you talk about that on the last?
No.
Okay, this is brilliant. So we decided, because we knew that we were going to be doing a lot of live shows, and there ought to be some sleeping involved at some point during the day. And so we have this incredible BXP team, Bestseller Experiment team. We want to put a big shout out to you. You guys have been amazing. We actually set up what we call the night watch. We wanted people to, instead of taking a stand on the wall in Game of Thrones and looking out for the wildlings, we wanted them to actually try and capture the chartlings. So we've got people signed up to a spreadsheet on Google Docs or Google Sheets, and they've taken an hour where they're actually monitoring the chart positions on Amazon and seeing if we hit, because literally Amazon update every hour, and if you miss it, if you miss that #1 slot potentially, then there's no way of really knowing that you're ever there. So we've got these people on the night watch right now looking and going across all the Amazon sites, and they're doing a sterling job, because honestly, without them, I don't think we'd have been able to even maybe know that we were hit #1 in our first category. So that was great. So a big shout out to everyone who's doing that for us. Fantastic work.
I was just looking at the chart. Now, we've moved up the chart in humorous fantasy. We're '2, so we are squished between Good Omens and The Color of Magic.
Oh boy!
I'm just gonna send you a screen grab.
Like childhood boy dreams for Mr. Stay right now.
I know.
But you know what? Actually, the very first book I ever read was Color of Magic by Terry Pratchett. My very first fantasy book, I'd say. I went on a weird Stephen King thing when I was about 14. I guess it was that whole exploration into scary stuff as a kid. But I then discovered Terry Pratchett's books and just absolutely fell in love with them. So for us to be like twins with Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett, that's something else. Even if it's only for the day, Mark?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the weird thing, but the difference between, we seem to have more reviews in the UK. We've got 23 customer reviews in the UK, averaging 4.9 out of 5. So thank you for all of those. That is amazing. But it's the crawl up the chart is slower. So we're number 40 in literary humor. Did you ever think we'd be in literary humor?
What exactly is literary humor? Is that
I'm going to have a look. Let's have a look.
Smoking a pipe or something.
Yeah. So #1 are people like there's Ruth Hogan, Keeper of Lost Things, which is massive. Marion Keyes is up there as well. Our friend David Barnett, who wrote Calling Major Tom, he's #9. So good for him. But yeah, we're where are we? I'll keep scrolling down. Oh, there we are. We're number 40. That's not bad.
Top 40.
But we are visible. We're really visible on that page, and that's the thing with when you do all this stuff with the keywords and everything. That's what you're positioning for. You're trying to make yourself as visible as possible, because you can advertise as much as you want, but if something pops up in front of someone and it looks good to them, every sale counts.
Yeah, and one of the things I've been seeing as well is that when you go and click on when you get into the chart, when you get into, say, those top 10 places on any of these charts, on the right-hand side, they have this at the very top. It's, I think it's called What's Hot or What's Trending. Yeah. And I've noticed us being #1 in a lot of those categories because the books above us may have been out for yonks. I mean, Good Omens, Color of Magic being 2. So we'll actually be #1 in the What's Trending on the right-hand side of that. And that's hopefully where, when people see the book, that's where they start clicking and think, what's this thing? What's back to reality? Yeah. And then you start to get visibility that way. And
that's why those reviews are so important, because people are going, what is this? And if the reviews are good, then people are much more likely to buy a copy,
Yeah, absolutely. Now we have some more questions coming in. There's a message here from Lawrence, who said that all those improv classes are starting to pay off. And that might be a reference to your previous theatrical days, Mark.
Possibly, yes. Yeah.
Richie asks, got any ideas for a follow-up book?
No.
It's probably a bad time to be asking Mr. Stay as he sweats profusely in his glass box. So we'll move on from there, but you never know. Never say never. Jack, yes, tell us when you're considering a follow-up. Oh, no. You see what you've started, Richie. Thank you very much. Nick has asked the question. It's a really good question, actually. How many do you need to sell to get onto the overall bestseller list?
Depends what country, depends what day of the week. I know that if you've got a title that's got a Kindle daily deal, that could be selling 3,000 to 5,000 copies in a day. And those don't always top the chart. So it could be more, could be a lot more.
Yeah, the thing is, it's no exact science, is it? Because it's a bit like the music charts. And what you find with the music charts is sometimes, they sometimes say, and this week's #1 album, which outsold every other album in the top 100. So you just don't know, and it depends. So part of the magic formula in this, and we've talked a lot about this on the podcast, is this idea that you have to often try and time your release so that you're not putting your book out on the same week when 10 of the titans of book selling in the world are releasing theirs. But to be honest, Mark, there's so many big best-selling authors. It's probably nearly impossible to have a quiet week where you can just slip in and just race to the top of the charts.
That's certainly the strategy when it comes to physical hardbacks and paperbacks. Is like, as we said before on the podcast, Martina Cole has a book out this week, or Ian Rankin, or Lee Child. Other authors tend to stay away. But with the Kindle chart doesn't really reflect that at all, because they have things like Kindle Daily Deals, which sometimes will be authors you've never heard of, but the mailing goes out and the Kindle public see that and pounce on it, and a book from a no one, or someone who's not a household name can shoot to the top of that chart. And like I said, they could be selling 3, 4, 5, 6,000 copies in a single day with a really good, and that's just in the UK. In the US, it's Lord knows how many more copies. But so it can't be gamed really. It can't be the overall chart is you can't play games with that. It is kind of you have to have a really good wind behind you to get to the top of that.
Yeah, and Amazon have been doing this long enough now that they know basically how this works. I think in the early days, they were when everyone was learning about what happens online. I mean, if you're an indie author back in 2010 and you found a little loophole, I mean, you could probably have raced to the top of the charts that way. Yeah. But I think things are so well refined now, which is good in a way because it's a fair playing game then. I think if you look in the music industry as well, I mean, the same thing that's happened for years. People used to go into HMV and buy up 5,000 copies of a single on the week of release, and they do that as a loss leader.
Yeah.
And actually there's many kind of stories of people doing that with paperbacks as well, like loading their car up with paperbacks and driving around every single bookshop and buying them up and then trying to flog them on at events and things. But it's actually, in some ways, it's much harder online to do that because everything is tracked and traced. Even reviews that aren't genuine reviews are getting found out by Amazon. So some people who are kind of paying for reviews are finding that they're getting removed. And actually, that's one thing that's so brilliant about this is that we've known that from very early day that we have to, really push for genuine reviews. And every review that you see on our list, we're reading for the first time as well. And
that's what's so wonderful about them. They're just surprising. Yeah, it's wonderful. Now we've got a couple of questions. One from Dennis, one from Richie. Dennis says, "When will you start seeing actual sales numbers?" Well, we actually see them. They're live on the KDP site, which I'm refreshing, like I said, every 30 seconds or so. And we have sold, there we go, another 10 copies while we've been on air, which is brilliant. So you can see those. You also see when you scroll down, you see the how many pages people have read on Kindle Unlimited, which you get paid for. You get sort of paid by the page there, which is fascinating. And then beneath that is a sort of summary of the royalties that we've earned. And curiously, we've earned more money from the UK than the States, which is fascinating. So, but yeah, so we can see that stuff live. Which is quite addictive. And then Richie has said, I know you've worked on film scripts for Mr. Stay. Have you thought about penning the screenplay version of the book after a nice break? It depends. I mean, the thing with screenplays, this is the difference between an author and a screenwriter. An author is always the author and ultimately the owner of their work. So, they even if someone made a film of our book, we would still own that book. They might buy the film rights, but ultimately the rights are ours. When you write a script, that script is then owned by the film company. So we could get fired at any time. This was what we had with Robot Overlords. John and I wrote the script. We came up with the idea. We worked on it. But at any time, the film company could have said, we're bringing in new writers or we're bringing in a new director, and they'd have been well within their rights to do it. So yes, we could, maybe work on the screenplay. But if they find that we're not up to snuff and they want to bring in other screenwriters, then they could do that. So I don't know. There's a part of me that would be interested in doing it. There's another part that I'd be absolutely fascinated to see someone else's take on it as well. So I think I would need a nice long break before I start thinking about that. But
that's like Bryan Cranston's comment about playing Trump. I'd need a bit. He said, I'd need to get some distance. I'd need to get some distance from Trump to be able to really play him properly.
Yeah.
But it's fascinating. I didn't know that about script writers getting sacked. Is that what happened? What happened in Walking Dead? Because I remember the guy that came up with the idea for Walking Dead. There was some big fallout, and other people.
You're confusing two things, because is it Robert Kirkman came up with the comic book, who really didn't have anything to do with the TV show, but it was Frank Darabont, who was the showrunner, who was fired from the show. So he's the one who found the book, optioned it, took it to a TV company, said, I want to make this TV show. They made him the showrunner. And then I think it was during the middle of season 2, maybe, there were budgetary problems, or as they were prepping for season 2, and he wouldn't budge and they fired him. This is my understanding of it. So yeah, the people who own it are the production company, and they can hire and fire writers and directors as they please. Richie says, how about write, shoot and market a film in a year? Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because we have a little story that I don't think we've ever talked about is that when Mark and I, and a friend of ours called Jeremy Mason, shout out to Jeremy if you're out there, Jeremy, when we came up with this idea for the podcast, it was originally going to be a threesome, as it were. And Jeremy's background has been in TV and film.
He's like the 6th member of Marillion now, isn't he?
Yes,
because Marillion.
He's worked his way.
Marillion fan when he was a kid, and he's now touring with them and making live documentaries and stuff like that. It's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we were talking to him about, and I've actually started making a documentary with Jeremy a few years ago, and so very familiar with his talents. And we've always talked about making documentaries, never talked about making a film. But I guess, Richie, your question is really interesting in some ways, because, in the old days, it was always about, trying to pitch your idea. I mean, in theory, you could kickstart something like this, but the thought of actually trying to make your own film, I think that's the question you're coming, like, could you actually make your own film? I would love to do something like that, but I just know that this film needs to be, no, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I think if this were to become a film, my dream would be is to see this as a big Hollywood summer smash, a kind of classic British comedy, a bit like, in fact, somebody prompted this in one of the reviews. They talked about the Cornetto trilogy, which is the Simon Pegg set of films, Hot Fuzz, Shaun of the Dead, and The World's End.
World's End, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's that kind of, it could work in that working title, big talk kind of arena, that kind of film where they package them over here and then they get a major studio involved, someone like Universal involved in the distribution. So essentially it's like an indie movie. So you have the indie movie sensibility, but you have the distribution of a big film. That's an ideal. That's an ideal package. So yeah. And someone said you need to cast Ben Aronovich as Aronovich.
That would be great. And Krista Adams, hi Krista, thanks for joining us on this live stream. Krista said, please tell us if there's not another book in the works for now, and that the podcast will continue. Ooh. Well, we've always said that if we got a bestseller, I think the line that we've always said is if we get a bestseller, then the podcast may continue. So it's actually all about getting people out to buy the book in the next couple of weeks to see if it will. I mean, right now we're kind of, you're asking what is the equivalent of The Walking Dead. I mean, the last couple of weeks we have been, I mean, I've not slept much the last couple of nights, but in the last couple of weeks, there's been so much work. There was a joke on Facebook I saw where it was like that moment where you realize you've written the book and the work has just begun. Yeah. And it's so true. It is so true. There are a million and one things that we wanted to do for this launch, which we haven't done. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that marketing ideas and things that we wanted to do. We just literally have not had time. So asking us right now about, is there going to be another book and more of a podcast is probably the wrong time to ask.
I think we are going to take a breather, though, aren't we? We need to take a couple of weeks, just to flop into a pool of sweat, in my case, and just take stock and see where we're going, and then come back with a plan. So
Absolutely.
That's the realistic answer, isn't it?
I think what we'll be doing on the Monday podcast, just if that was kind of the question about what will be happening every Monday, is my understanding is we'll have something going out next week and the week after. It may be a replay of what you're hearing right now. Hello. So, but the bottom line is that I think it's important. Self-care. We talked about self-care a lot, didn't we, Mark, on the podcast? Yeah, we did. Mark and I need to actually get some sleep, and
like now.
Exactly. And so yeah, who knows? But who knows, right? I mean, what I always think, you can never say never. And
hang on, I've got someone at the door. 1 second.
Oh, someone at the door.
Talk amongst yourself.
Okay, I'll keep talking. So Richie says you need Richard Curtis. Do you know that would be amazing? Richard Curtis, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, one of the greatest British comic writers out there. That would be amazing. So if anyone knows Richard Curtis, slip him a copy of the book, right? Because you never know what might happen. Michael Milton. Hi, Michael. Thank you for joining us. Michael has said we're number 2 in the humorous charts now, guys, and you've cracked their top 850 books in the UK Kindle store.
Wicked.
We're getting up. Yeah, this is all happening. Mark Posey, thanks for joining us. Mark said he's just bought the book.
Yay, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. We very much appreciate that. It's ranking pretty well for so early in the morning.
Did you? My friend Vicky was asking if I needed any more water, which is very kind of her. Did you answer Josh's questions? He said, "Are you signed up for Kindle Unlimited automatically, or is that a choice?" Did you address that?
No, I didn't address that one yet.
Because that's an interesting one, because that is a choice, and the one we've made. Because when you sign up to KDP and Kindle Unlimited, you have to be exclusive with Kindle for 90 days. But the flip side of that is you become a lot more visible on site. Kindle Unlimited, if you've signed up to that, is where you can read the book for free if you're a Kindle Unlimited reader. So yeah, that was a deliberate choice on our part as well. So, and we've also activated things like Kindle lending as well, so people can lend the book to friends for a limited period, so they can try before they buy. So I think if you're a debut, these are, and you want the word to spread, I think these are definitely things to think about. So yeah,
I mean, we should probably explain what Kindle Unlimited is, because there's so many. There's KDP and Kindle Unlimited, and then there's Kindle lending and all these different things. How would you kind of sum up to someone that doesn't know what Kindle Unlimited is? What would you say?
Well, Kindle Unlimited, you pay $7.99 a month in the UK, and you can listen to. It's essentially a subscription model where you can listen to any book, and I think you get audiobooks as well with that as well, and magazines on your Kindle device. So, and if something's in Kindle Unlimited, then you can just download it and read it at your leisure. So that's the idea behind that.
So
Harry, it's kind of like Netflix, and Harry Potter's on there as well. So, and it's a good, if you're a voracious reader, kind of makes sense to jump in and take advantage of that, because you will ultimately save a ton of money, I think.
And at the moment, I know that a lot of authors are kind of thinking about whether they do this or not. And the current word in the street is that it's worth doing the exclusive with Amazon, because you get paid for the number of page reads that you get in Kindle Unlimited, which is very interesting. So if you notice, there's actually 2 charts. Amazon recently launched a best-selling chart, and I think one day that chart's probably going to become more valuable, if you like, than a New York Times chart, which is curated. There's still people kind of making human decisions, not based purely on statistics. And the Kindle chart has got 2 different tabs. One is top selling, and one is most read. And that's really interesting. And they're getting those statistics from people reading number of pages. And as an author, you get rewarded for more of your book that is read. It used to be that you would get paid for lending a book that's been lent or borrowed, if you like, on Kindle Unlimited, even if the person only read 1 page. Now it's based on number of actual page reads, and that's how you get paid. So it's almost like a kind of electronic library. And I think the most read chart is probably, as an author, more interesting than the most sold, because it shows how many people are actually reading your book, and it's not just sitting on the virtual shelf, which I know often happens.
Yeah, yeah. Just for answer to follow-up question, so Amazon doesn't let you know of your best ranking? No, they don't. They don't. Not as far as I'm aware.
No,
I mean,
and it's not archived anywhere as well, which is
no.
really challenging. I guess it keeps bringing people back to the site.
Well, there is an app. Hang on, let me find it because I've got it on my phone.
Oh, here we go.
There is an app called Novel Rank, which traces the ranks of books, but I think it only applies to the main Kindle chart. It doesn't do subgenres. So let me have a look. I'm going to put our book in. And
Yeah, and that's the crucial thing, because there are so many subgenres now in Amazon completely nth degree of subgenre.
Yeah.
That to try and keep up with all of those, the only route that you can actually see how your book's doing is by going to your page. And we should also say, in that country, I mean, people, we can't assume people don't know this. Each sale is only applied to this chart in that country. So part of our challenge was obviously, do you put all of your effort into UK? Do you put all of your effort into .com, Amazon.com in the US? Then there's .ca. So there isn't like a global chart as such. At least I'm not aware of a global chart on Amazon that aggregates everything across the world, which would be really fascinating if they did, because I mean, surely the technology's there. They could, can they just collate all of their own country's statistics and put them into a global chart? But .com is actually not the global chart. That's just for sales on Amazon.com in the States. And that's different from any sales made on Amazon.ca. So it is kind of interesting. Mark Posey, he says you should be able to find the best overall rank on your author central dashboard.
Okay.
I have to look into that, because I've not seen that statistic, but maybe that's something. Maybe Mark, you can tell us on the text chat there if that's something that you get later on, because we're still trying to work out what the time lag is. We don't know how, even when we see that we've sold books during this particular broadcast, are those the books that were sold during the broadcast, or are those books that were sold 2 or 3 hours ago? That's the kind of, I'm not sure about how live is. I mean, if it's anything like the internet, it's always a 15-second lag, whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, because if you look at the sales dashboard, we've sold X titles. If you look at the month to date, it's actually fewer titles.
Yeah, and if you look at the royalties, it's saying that we don't have royalties in some countries where we've got chart positions in right now. So
yeah. But it all depends on their reporting. I mean, I know that there's always some sort of lag with these things, but there's always some kind of reckoning as well. So at some point they'll draw a line under it, and then you get your payment, I guess. So
interesting. Oh, here's a great thing from Krista Adams. Krista says, for your information, on my Amazon page, for your books under products related to this item, I'm seeing many bare-chested men covers. Since I'm not a romance reader and yours isn't in that category, what's up?
Well, I think that someone pointed out earlier there's a gay erotic fiction title called Back to Reality. So hopefully they're seeing a nice rise in sales thanks to us as well. So, that's
definitely what's up, isn't it?
That's our competition. So good luck to you, chaps.
Could you imagine that chap waking up, or whoever it is that wrote that book, they wake up this morning and suddenly found they're like #1 in gay erotica or something. And can't for the life of them work out what's happened. In fact, wouldn't it be kind of crazy, the whole legacy of this podcast, the 2,000 hours we've spent writing this book and doing this podcast, actually ends up that we've helped a fellow author get to the #1 in their own genre?
Well, that was always the plan, wasn't it?
That was the plan. It was never quite planned like this, was it?
Not all about us, yeah.
It's a bit like, I heard a story about somebody who did they actually call themselves Stephen King, or they had a similar title?
Yeah, there was a fake Michael Connolly as well, and it does happen. People try it on. To be fair, Amazon are really good at shutting them down when people try that on. So yeah.
And Jack actually points out, Jack Logan says, these are in women's fiction humor. So maybe we missed a trick there, Mark. Maybe we should have had that kind of bare-chested male with a werewolf or something. That seems to be quite trendy. Or a bare-chested male with a cow could have worked.
Listen, enough about your strange peccadillos.
There must be a whole genre, though, that, I mean, everyone's seen those covers, right? The shape-shifting hot male. Has anyone done like a comedy genre of taking the mickey out of those types of novels? Because that's probably a whole new genre in itself.
Well, I suspect that the people who read those books are very passionate about them and will probably find you, dress up as a werewolf, and kill you. So I'd be very, very wary of that. So hang on, Mark Posey said, if you go to Author Central, click on Sales Info tab, click on Sales Rank. Sales Info tab and click on Sales Rank.
And you should get it. Meanwhile, Krista Adams has posted up the names of 3 female authors who I'm not going to read out on air because they're getting enough promotion as it is. They don't need any more. But yes, apparently there are three female authors that have a very highly related book. I think over time, my hope is over time that as the magic algorithm kicks in, it is a bit like the 7 secrets of Coca-Cola, isn't it? No one actually quite knows. Probably in Amazon, no one actually knows because only people own a certain piece of it each. But as that hopefully starts kicking over time and the sales increase, we'll start to get ranked in more with well, hopefully. I mean, the kind of names that we've seen come up are Douglas Adams, Hitchhiker's Guide. We've seen obviously Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett that we're alongside now in the charts. Bridget Jones, Fielding.
Helen Fielding.
Helen, that's right, Helen Fielding as well. So it'll be interesting. That's partly one of the beautiful things about launching a book is that you start to see, based on obviously what everyone else has bought who buys your book, you start to see the kind of categories that you most associate with. And I think as an author, that's really interesting. When it's your first book or a book in a new genre, for example, it's harder at first because you might not know quite how to market this book. But now that we know that those are the kind of authors that we're being associated with, when we start looking at things like Facebook ads, for example, which we've held back on today. So all of this stuff that you see right now, all these chart positions, it's organic, unpaid. There's no advertising going on, which in itself is huge, because I know most authors have to spend a ton of money up front just to try and get the thing going.
Right. But just going back to Mark, we've been looking in the Kindle sales. It's actually in Author Central, which is your author page. And actually, yes, there is a ranking. So that's very helpful.
But how does that work, though, when you co-write a book, Mark? That'll just be, you'll be seeing your ranking as a writer, which will be different from my ranking.
No, it's by title. So I've got Robot Overlords and I've got Back to Reality.
Oh, okay.
And then the French edition of Robot Overlords, which has no sales in the UK.
So if anyone's out there in France, just please go and buy.
They can get it on Amazon.fr.
So Amazon.fr. Go make Mark's day and get his sale.
I don't have visibility on that, but yeah, I've already got more reviews for Back to Reality than I have for Robot Overlords. That's fantastic.
That's pretty impressive. I mean, and we can't, obviously, this is, you know, we talked how grateful we are. And if you haven't put your review up, please do if you've read the book. In fact, we'd love to find someone who bought the book this morning and has already read it, because I know there are people out there.
We've had, I mean, people have been saying that on Twitter. So some people have, which is great.
They've read it in like one.
Well, hang on. Let me just look at the notifications. We had one a minute ago that popped up. Where's it gone? There you go. Steve Gowland, bought book and read. Well done, cracking first book. More, please. So I guess Steve bought that, read it, and boom. So yeah,
that's incredible. Absolutely incredible. I mean, you know, it takes me a long time to write a book. It takes me even longer to read one. So incredible. Now we've actually got an email from Joe Curtis, or a message from Joe. Hi, Joe. Thanks for joining us. Joe has said, "What writing marketing lessons from this do you guys think you'll apply to your next project? Or is it that when you're off to a tropical island with bags stuffed full of Colin the Caterpillar cakes?" I've read that slightly wrong, but yeah. Marketing lessons, Mark. What would you say is your main marketing lesson that you've learned so far? I mean, it's early days in the marketing, but we've learned so much already.
There's I mean, where do I start? I mean, I've learned so much doing this. I mean, I think the big thing is I think the key thing is to set a goal and know what you're after. This is what we had with the Joe and a pen, because Joe and a pen, this as part of the experiment, we're going for a big wallop on day one. And you know, we're trying to make a big impact. Whereas I like the Joanna Penn approach, which is to have lots of books earning you a steady income, and it doesn't necessarily mean that on day one you have to make a really, really big splash. So I think, you know, setting goals and setting targets for those goals is the key lesson. Because so often, like you say, so many authors, you publish a book and then it's just like, well, we'll put it out there and see what happens. Whereas I think if you have a very clear idea of what you want to achieve, so yeah, all sorts of, and just lots of little practical things as well. Too many to list now.
Yeah,
but,
I think one of the things I found interesting, the analogy that I've got is we're a bit like the marathon runners, that we've got to the front of the line of the London Marathon. We've eaten just the biggest amount of pasta you could imagine the night before, and then we've sprinted down that first 100 meters going, way, and then got to 100 meters like with our chests and lungs starting to hurt. Look behind us, yeah, we've got a bit of a head start on everyone else, but man, there's still a long way to go. So what Joanna said, and actually Joanna's episode, I just want to mention this, is trending quite highly in our top 10 rated episodes of the year. If you haven't heard about that, get over to the Facebook page where there's a link to a chart. In fact, it's on our website as well. If you go to our blog on our website, bestsellerexperiment.com, there is a post, I don't know how many posts down it will be, but if you type in poll or vote, you'll find a link where you can vote for your favorite episode. And we're going to be, towards the end of the day, we're going to be telling you what the shortlist is. And that's a bit slight. If you've been listening to the podcast the last week, it's a slight change of plan. We did say we were going to be revealing the top 10 countdown in reverse today. What we decided to do is, and this is from a marketing perspective, we've decided to show the most popular by the end of the day. Won't give you orders though as to who's number 1 and who's number 10. And then we're going to retweet every single author who's come on the show to tell them that we're running a poll and to promote it to their feed and get votes coming in. So we're going to run that poll for a little bit longer. So we're trying to look at all. So on the marketing front, one of the things I've learned is it's not just about the book. You've got to think, I mean, obviously, when you look at this podcast, in some ways, this is a whole different way of marketing a book. I probably wouldn't recommend it.
No. Well, it's worked. I mean, it's worked in that we have got a number 1 on day 1. It's not going to make us rich. It's not going to. But in terms of launching a book, and if you think of the listeners and their passion for this project, I mean, I've never known anything like it. Having them at our backs all the way through, it's just been amazing. So, that has definitely worked, no question.
It has. And I think for me, one of the biggest things about this podcast was by having that public declaration, and I coach in this all the time, like put your dream out there, make a public declaration. Having done that really early on has made this project really real. And it's the thing that's kept us going. It's because of you. It's everyone watching this now, everyone listening to the replay of this on the podcast. It's because of you that this book is out there. Because as you know, jokingly, and it wasn't a joke, at the beginning of this podcast a year ago, I was the guy that had started 20 books but had never finished one. And I don't think I'm alone with that. I actually think I would put my neck out and say I think the majority of people in the world that would like to write a book are in that boat. They probably started a book, but they've never actually finished it. Maybe even as high as 90% of people that dream of publishing a book. So everyone who's published a book, you are like a special superheroic group of people, which I appreciate so much more now, having gone through this Iron Man journey of book writing. And but the big thing from the marketing perspective is, you write the book, but then the marketing has to start when you start the book, but it really doesn't really, you don't start to see the fruits of your labor until the book's published. And then you can't just give up after day 1 or week 1. I think a lot of people go away feeling very despondent if they don't get a review, or their first reviews are 1 star, or they don't sell more than 2 books on their first day. So I think that's my biggest lesson.
Yeah, doggedness. Yes, this is just a bit. It's like when you pass your driving test. I remember very clearly saying, "Oh, great, I've done it," and my driving instructor saying, "No, this is just the start. You've got a whole lifetime of driving ahead of you to make mistakes and learn and become a better driver." And I think it's the same thing with publishing. This is, our book's out there, but this book is not done. It's not finished. We'll continue to sell and and pursue other ways of publishing it as well. I'd love to do an audiobook, and who knows about paperbacks and stuff like that. Where are we going to go with that sort of thing? We've had brief conversations about it, but nothing that's been set in stone. So there's all sorts of new opportunities out there.
So when you talk about it being like your driving test, you're saying that a car crash could still happen, Mark?
Oh yeah.
Now, Jack Logan has asked, firstly, he's asked me, what's the sunset picture behind me, Mark D? Is it from a Kate Bush aerial cover? I'm a big Kate Bush fan, actually, talking to music. But no, actually,
it does look like it, doesn't it? It does.
Yeah,
it does.
It's an incredible artist in Vancouver who does native artwork and uses these beautiful colors, kind of glowing oranges and reds and things, and I've become a bit of a fan of his work. So yeah, that's what that is, Jack. Sorry to disappoint. And Jack also asked, when are we releasing the Vault of Gold? Well, the Vault of Gold in its current form is still available, free, and it's about 1,700 times bigger than our actual novel, which is about 400 pages, I believe. It's quite a piece of work. And yes, watch this space. I mean, you probably guessed from our clues on the many hints on the website and the podcast that it won't be around forever. That we do have a plan, but we won't be revealing that just yet, Mark, because we still have to work that out, don't we?
Yeah, we have half a plan.
Half a plan, which is better than no plan at all, right?
Yeah.
And in fact, we didn't start off on this journey with a plan to create the vault. We actually started off with the question of, we need to create something which will get people from a podcast, which is a very audible experience, but know where to click links and do things. How do you get people to that? Now, this is a big tip as well for anyone marketing a book. It's the same thing. You have to give people something in order to get them to engage with you. It doesn't work anymore, and I've discovered this from a marketing tip. It doesn't work anymore just having a sign up to my newsletter link on your web page. I mean, yes, you will get some people do that, but if you want to build a decent sized list, which we've been very lucky to have done on this podcast, you've got to somehow incentivize people to engage. And so if you haven't got that yet, honestly, you're missing 90% of the marketing of the book. You need something to give away. Now, we weren't going to give away a novella of our book because we didn't have time to write it. But that's the tip I hear a lot of authors do, write a short story of one of your characters, which is maybe partly or slightly related to the book you've got out or you're putting out, and give that away. I mean, most of the big authors, the multi-million selling authors, such as Mark Dawson, I believe Shannon Mayer as well does this, because they've got so many books now. I mean, they're in the 30s and 40s. They actually give away one of their entire books that you'd otherwise be paying money for on Amazon. So once you get your production rate up, as it were, that's another option as well.
Yeah, absolutely. A friend of mine does that. Michael R. Miller, fantasy author. He's got, I think he's done 2 out of 3 in a trilogy. And the first book you can get for free just as signing up to his newsletter, which I've got, and it's terrific. So yeah,
excellent. And thank you to Liam Saville. Thanks for joining us, Liam. He says, well done on the book, guys. It was a fantastic read. Review posted on Amazon.com. 5 stars from me. Thank you so much, Liam. Honestly, that is the fuel in our tanks right now. And Jackie's just checked the Writer's Vault of Gold, Jackie Harmon, and she says, and by the way, Jackie, thank you for coming on this journey with us. I've seen your name pop up so often, and I feel like I almost know you personally now. Yeah. Thank you for all your tweets over the year and on the Facebook page as well. She says that the Vault of Gold is now 502 pages.
Yeah, it's about 140,000 words.
Which is insane, because most lead magnets, as we call them, these kind of ideas of PDFs, they're like, 10, 12 pages with double spaced lines. And this is actually a complete and utter encyclopedia of the knowledge from the show. Yeah. And I mean, obviously, guys, if you haven't got it yet, get to the website, bestsellerexperiment.com, click on the, he says, looking desperately at the website. I can't remember what it is now.
Well, it's the free book. It's the free book tab.
Yeah. Book. Click on that, put your email address in, and then you'll have it before it disappears in some form. So, Mr. S, I keep doing this, don't I? I just
talking to you,
but I'm allowed to. It's 5:25 in the morning here. I think I'm going to go and get some kip before we get back to what would be our lunchtime session in Canada. 12. Well,
shall we do a giveaway before we go?
Oh, yes. Right. Yes. Let's do a live giveaway to everyone who's actually on it. So what have you got for us, Mark?
Well, I've got a beautiful copy of Ian Rankin's John Rebus thriller, Rather Be the Devil, which has been signed by the man himself. So that's beautiful. I think it's first edition.
Let's have a look at the signature. Have you got the signature there?
There we go. Can you see it? Sorry, I can't
see it. First edition.
There we go. First edition signed by Ian Rankin. So much desired. So yeah, let's give this away. So let me bring up the little question that we
actually, whilst you're doing that, thank you, Michael Milton. He asked, did you think 1 year ago that you'd be the meat in a Neil Gaiman and Terry Pratchett sandwich as a top three book in the Amazon humor chart? That must be a good feeling. Yeah, really absolutely.
It really is.
Absolutely. Although it's a bit squishy, I would say. It's a bit squishy. We'd rather be on the other side of Neil, but we're working on that. Or actually, you're working on that, I should say. And Jackie says, wow, signed first edition. I mean, that's got to be worth something, Mark, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. And this is a nice, easy start. So all we're asking is, in the opening line of the book, in the prologue, the character of Johanna, she has to choose between Vegas and what other place. So she has to choose between Vegas and where. So what you want to do, how can people enter the competition?
Yeah, the way to enter this is you go to our contact form on our website and you send us the answer, and at the beginning of the next show we will announce the winner. So we're going to do that literally we've got the next show coming up in a few hours from now. I believe is it 6 o'clock your time, Mark? 6 o'clock British Standard.
Let me have a look at the schedule.
Yeah, I think it's 10 a.m. PST, 1 p.m. EST, and
6 p.m. in London.
6 p.m. in London.
One thing, I am hoping to have Joanne Harris here sometime this afternoon, but she's en route and she's moving around, so we'll see. So yeah.
Excellent. So send us it through the contact form there, and we will pick the winner. And we've got loads more books. We've got some more books to give away, haven't we, in the UK evening?
Yes.
Canada. And I know that Shannon Mayer is bringing a load of swag with her, she said, for this evening show. So we've got Shannon Mayer coming live into the Vancouver studio right here. And this is not to be underestimated, because we had Shannon on the show a few times quite early on. Since then, she is now ranking as an author in the anywhere between the top 1 and 6 of authors in the US in a number of different genres, including fantasy. She's outselling Neil Gaiman sometimes on some days. She's outselling Stephen King on some days. She's sometimes bed twins with J.K. Rowling. So don't miss that, because she's going to be telling us a lot more about what she's learned since the time that we interviewed her, which is actually quite a few months ago now. So very special guest. We have basically one of the biggest authors in the world. I would say I wouldn't know exactly where she'd be placed in indie authors, but I'm guessing top 5, top 10 indie authors in the world. And honestly, indie authors, it's where it's happening right now. It's the growth area of the whole publishing industry. And so join us then.
Lovely. Right. You're gonna get some sleep. I'm gonna freshen up. I think we're going to bring this to an end.
You notice behind Mark, the office will quickly be like emptying as the smell emanates from the glass.
They've all run. Yeah.
Brilliant stuff. Well, thank you, Mark, for joining us. And if you haven't already, please get over to bestsellerexperiment.com, sign up to our newsletter. And if you haven't bought the book yet, please get over to bestsellerexperiment.com. I keep doing that. bestsellerexperiment.com/back to reality. We'll talk a bit about why we've made the link on our page rather than sending you direct to Amazon. There's a whole science behind that, folks, as well. And tell me about that. That was an interesting experiment, but I'll tell you about how that happens. It's fascinating. I learned a lot in the last few days.
And if you have bought the book, tell a friend. Yeah, tell them how much you love it. Get them to buy it. 99p for today only. We will be putting it up to what? I don't know, £52, a pound for every week.
Yeah, at least £52, I think, on Tuesday morning. So that in US money for North American fans, that's at least about $1,000, isn't it, Mark?
Easily.
The current Brexit exchange rate.
Yeah. No question. Yeah.
So do get on over, and thank you everyone for being with us on this live chat. We've really appreciated you having it. It would be I wouldn't say it'd be boring just chatting with Mark, but actually I've really enjoyed this format, because usually it's Mark and I just chatting with each other, and it's lovely having all these questions. Thank you to everyone. Thanks, Dennis, Josh, Richie, Jackie, Nick, and everyone else that joined us on this first ever live bestseller experiment podcast with the 2 Marks. So
Yeah.
I'll just finish up by saying it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And it's goodbye from Mark 2. Goodbye.
Goodbye.